Fnatic's man in the mid lane.
Thank you very much, Pulse. I am indeed standing here with Febivin. Congratulations on your win. And you're now 2-1 on the board. You faced off against all of the, what we call the top teams that we expected coming out of the split. What do you make of this competition in Europe so far? Is it stronger or weaker than last year? What do you think?
It's really hard to judge so far because it's just the beginning of the split. So I think the best teams right now are Vitality, Origin, us, and H2K. And I think H2K is still the strongest one because they just seem the best right now. I think it's a bit worse than last season summer split because everyone has roster changes, so it's really different right now, and it's really hard to judge for me and for every team which team is actually the best, and because there's so many new teams right now.
Very honest answer, thank you. I also wanted to talk to you about H2K that you just faced off against. They're considered the cerebral team, the smart team. How did you force that so smart team to face off against you with a poke comp and then fight you when you had a team fighting comp?
We knew we were strong at the 20-minute mark, and they were sieging mid tower, and we had teleport advantage, and they kind of got caught off guard, and we just used our CC to lock down their Lulu and their Corki, and that is basically their damage, and we won a team fight off that, and then after that we played really scared. We could have engaged a lot more because we just stalled the game for 45 minutes, which shouldn't have happened. But yeah, well played to them.
Well played indeed. And I wanted to ask you about your two of your new members, Spirit and Gamsu. How are they fitting into the team? You've done the two Korean imports before. How's it working out this time?
Getting Spirit and Gamsu in our team is really nice because they are really good together. They are really nice guys. We still have obviously a lot of problems like with the communication and stuff, but I think with the weeks going in and the hard work we're doing every day, every week is gonna be great again.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing it. Congratulations on your win once again, Febivin. And for now, we are going to send it back to the analyst desk to break down that game and to wrap up the day.
Thank you very much, Pyra, and I think they will break it down with a lot of pleasure because that was some high-level League of Legends of probably the best two teams in the league right now, excluding Origin and maybe their current form from today, but just good stuff all around.
I think it's the most exciting game that we've seen of the split.
Even though it was slow in the beginning.
Very, very clear decisions and very clear consequences because of those decisions. One of the things that stands out to me was how H2K did play from behind after giving up an ace and then a Baron, because as a team that traditionally was unable to come back from deficits, I was quite impressed with how they've evolved. Now, it is a completely different set of players to summer last year, but it does bode very well for the future for one of the top tier teams.
Yeah, I agree. And obviously when we have these slower pace games, some people find it super boring to watch and so on. But the thing is, it's very difficult to make an aggressive play if the other team is positioned correctly on the map to counter that play. Because like H2K's composition, Lulu, Morgana against Lissandra, like it is so difficult for you to hard engage on that. And if you go too far, you might end up losing the entire game because you then overextend and you just jump into a trap. So it was very difficult for Fnatic to finish the game. Obviously, they got the last big team fight.
Well, as you say, it was the story of the game, or finding those engages as well, and we have the sequence of events to show that here, because it all boiled down to the ace and then the two team fights that came after it.
Yeah, very interesting after this ace that Febivin was saying they had to play a little bit scared, but at this point, Fnatic taking this fight was great engage out of Noxiac.
It is absolutely insane engage. It's also where the composition really starts spiking. Kalista, Kindred, and Lissandra all do extremely well here around 20 minutes. Odamne comes in late, and I have to say, I feel like the mistakes H2K made in this game were pretty big, honestly. This one here getting super surprised, then it leads obviously into this Baron here, which is good by H2K. They get the ace, Odamne comes in, and so on, and like this is where H2K basically has won the game, in my opinion.
It was very exciting to see, though, both teams understanding the team fights that they could clearly go for, and then they fully go for. H2K threw everything and the kitchen sink into the Baron pit, and this was the Baron power play that ended up, in fact, being negative.
All right, so last play here, if I remember 100% correct, yeah, the last engage coming in. First of all, Ryu ends up doing 0 damage. He misses 2 Qs, he E's on himself or his teammate, sorry, that's the first Q miss. So he has no impact in this fight, and Odamne, I don't understand why he's teleporting in. Not even a discussion if he could finish the game or not, but he just ends up engaging in or teleporting in behind alone 1v4. The rest of his team wants to kite. they can't kite because he's teleporting in and he's about to die. So they have to now re-engage, but that's not what their comp wants to do. Had they just disengaged, which they basically already had, let him push the bot lane. Worst case, you just get another fight in 2 minutes around Baron.
Looking at that again, I feel like the timing of the teleport, if he at least hadn't started the TP, I think they would have maybe second-guessed whether he was actually going. He could have cancelled it at that point. I think there were a couple of plays there that Odo could have made to have at least, as Crepa was putting it, just had both of the Nexus towers down.
Yeah.
And I think you put Fnatic in such a tough spot.
Because you say, could he have finished the game? It doesn't matter. It does matter, the fishing.
No. So, like, I meant just for the fight itself, because his decision to teleport, if he could finish or not, is irrelevant. Because he shouldn't TP no matter what. Because he's TPing in behind 1v4, and his team is built to run away.
Lawyered.
So no matter what happens, he shouldn't teleport there. So that was bad play by him. I also feel like Jankos earlier in the game, I got very angry on the desk at like 15, 16 minutes when he goes top to try and gank and he flashes over the wall, misses Cocoon, gives up mid tower. When all his team wanted to do at that point was honestly just wait and scale up with Fiora, because she would just outduel anyone.
And
why?
That play had a knock-on effect, though, because Odo then couldn't then be in that solo lane. Even then, when there's nobody going to be in that lane against him, he doesn't feel confident enough to sit down there and push. And the thing was, you look at the two champions against him, Na was just about strong enough to take him for most parts of that game until he really started getting a lot of damage as Fiora scaled up. The Lissandra can just wave clear in front. We already know that from the top lane matchup that still is a tricky one and kind of depends on the engage tool. So for a long time in that game, Odo Amne just didn't have the confidence to split push because he just felt like he wasn't strong enough.
And of course, if you step back and you look at just how that game played out, it did take over 40 minutes to finish, but it was very, very clear the different pockets of, aggression, non-aggression. And Strauss had actually pointed it out off air, how in contrast to the previous game, when you were looking at CS numbers, sidewave management, map pressure, and when you look at vision, which is something that Fisher had mentioned, the amount of pink wards that were picked up and bought, you could actually see some of the mechanics in use that is separating the likes of Fnatic and H2K against some of the teams that are lower down the ladder. And it was just those big calls and those big positional errors that ended up costing, at the end, H2K.
And to clarify that slightly, I was contrasting it with the Splice game, where Splice had almost a similar composition, utilizing a TF to wave clear with the teleport in this game on Lissandra. The difference was the CS numbers. Everybody on Fnatic and H2K way above 300 just before that 30-minute mark. And Splice, you had a TF that had barely 200 and 220 at that point. So good wave management by Fnatic. That was what this comp was made to do, and stop the 1-4 ability, and then when they try and, when they're out of position, engage them with the Lissandra.
And really well played by Febiven, in my opinion. Keeping side lane pressure, meaning that H2K couldn't group very effectively, meaning it was hard for Odo also to push because he could get TP on and die, and also the engages in the fights. The one in mid lane, they win and take Baron. That's his engage. I think Febiven played a great game. And I think it's awesome that Fnatic are now surprising us in the sense they beat H2K here, because we need...
You.
Yeah, sure. I said H2K would win. That's fine. But, we want these top teams to do well.
And play good games
And play
overall.
good games. So I'm just happy that we had two good teams facing each other, playing good League of Legends.
You're also very happy when your prediction was about to come true and HK came back, because you were like, see, I told you. When it
That teleport, man, that game was won.
Anyways, with all that, let's take a look at the standings. Let's take a look at the ladder. With all that, Fnatic is not the undefeated team at the top of the table, but it is G2 Esports riding high at 3-0. Then at the bottom, we see Giants and Splice still without a win. Let's start with the top of the table, G2 Esports. 3-0, and probably for me the most surprising result out of all.
Yes and no. I think they're playing very, very well, and this is a team that can also play from behind. 2 of those 3 wins, they had deficits of varying scales, but they're also playing against the weaker teams on the table. So we need to see how they're going to perform against Origin, how they're going to perform against H2K, how they're going to perform against Fnatic, and then we can really judge their individual mechanical ability as well as their strategic team play.
I mean, 2 of the teams they beat are 0-3, so yes, they have been having the easiest schedule. I think Youngbuck and some of the other guys had some good tweets after the game today, basically saying, we weren't really proud of this game. The play wasn't great, but we were happy about the focus and the attitude we had in game, so we got back into the game, and then we won it. So that's also very important for these new young teams, that they can play from behind.
And I also think it's so important, the confidence that it's going to give both Youngbuck as a coach, the imported Koreans, even Kikis, who was a little bit of a tilty player at times. I think going 3-0, building up this buffer at the beginning of a split, can only set them up for success when you get middle of the splits and then looking towards playoff positions.
Yeah, and looking at controlling the meta as well, we asked the guys at home who they thought had the best view of the meta so far. And we had a tweet from @Zayan who said, G2 have adapted to do meta very quickly, especially bringing out the Graves jungle, Tom Trundle picks in week 1. And those are the kind of things that you can't underestimate. See Origin last week in the beginning of a split.
That's very fair. I think, though, when you look at the jungle matchup today, it was slightly less impressive from Trick. Last week, I think he was, 6-1, pre-15 in over both games. This time, didn't do as well. He had
Different
the Elise
setup,
today,
yeah.
back to a different setup, wasn't quite
It's a
the
bit
best,
over-eager.
but-
You know what I've looked at? The 3 games we've seen, all 3 games, he's been in the wrong place at the wrong time, and he's been punished for it. But the team has rallied behind him when he gets caught again, and then won team fights that proceed. So got to be a little more careful, especially in the early to mid game.
That is very interesting to me because we've seen a lot of early game aggression coming out of the junglers. We've seen players like Airwax actually doing really, really well because the early game calls for it. Then we have players like Amazing saying, well, you got to be able to be a bit crazy in the early game. And then you had the interview with Shook where he actually said, no, I think it's all about being calculated and being safer.
Old man shook.
I mean, it's interesting juxtaposition.
Especially when you consider that Shook was kind of the loose cannon on previous teams in many ways. Today, played a lot more controlled, a lot more calm with Vitality. And, you know, even in the interview, he's like, look, it was the game plan. We wanted to starve them and suffocate their resources, and that's how they picked up the win.
It's what you have to do when you are against a team who are certain stages in the game can push, on your towers. If you go too aggressive there, you end up often losing towers, you get caught out or whatever. They're against the Twisted Fate. So it's like, we can't really go too aggressive because they have double global. Twisted Fate and Tom Kench, I believe it was, from Wonderware.
Yeah.
So it was honestly just smart, but it was also poorly played by Splice, allowing Vitality to just sit and scale up. Like, they just kept Nukeduck in mid lane to wave clear because TF just always ran into mid with Corkin. They were like 4v4 in there.
I think there was a fundamental problem, though, that I think Vitality could have capitalized on a bit harder, was that TF normally has picked to snowball a lane. Tam Ken, sure, you can get him ahead, he gets tanky. Bot lane, they had a losing matchup as well. So who do you snowball in that match? I think Vitality could have pushed a little bit harder.
Well, getting a little bit more insight into Vitality, I know you sat down with both Sean's and Fresh before, but we still have a little bit more of that to go, so let's listen.
How easy is it to coach your players with their personalities? I'll shoot this to both of you before we move on. Sean?
All right, so my first stage on Gambit was with Diamond, Edward, Forgiven, Cabo. Well, Bessie is like, this is actually like a really high ego person, but good ego, so it's fine. And then after, like, once you get this ability to like handle those kind of people, then after when you come with like, I don't know, like more docile players, I would say, like it's fine, because as long as right at the beginning they respect your authority and they respect like how is the pyramid of the team like going in, then it's fine because they know I'm coach, they are players, so they should not like do anything when it's work. Then after out of work, then it's fine. You can be, if you have good relationship with your players, you can be a friend with them because then after they can trust you like a big brother and things like that. So.
It was really fun talking to Sean's and I'm So Fresh because Sean's had a lot more of a controlled style, and I'm So Fresh was like, look, they're my friends, we deal with things on a friendship basis, and what I like about it is there's different approaches. Like Sheepy's in a very similar position, in my opinion, to Fresh. He's got a lot more of a personal relationship. But when Sean's was describing the pyramid, we finished the chat and he was like, yes, there is a structure, there's a clear management approach, there's a clear analyst involvement, and it's great when you think of it in a pyramid structure, the players at the bottom with all the support stuff up top, or vice versa, you can build them up. And I just want to see how it continues to evolve because Sean's demonstrates an ability to get Gambit multiple levels up. And Vitality are in a pretty good spot with Shook calling them the super team that wants to be number 1.
I was chatting to him yesterday, obviously not on camera, I'm not as fancy as you are getting to interview, but
You are allowed to do that, by the way, if you want to.
maybe next week. But I was talking to him about your in-house culture for Vitality, because I like what Fnatic has been doing with Daylor and the setup they've been running, very focused on the schedule, on planning and everything. And Vitality is very much the same. Like, the players go to bed at the same time, they wake up at a set time, there's lunch every day at 1 p.m. and it's made obviously by the manager, who's the guy
What's for
in-house.
lunch?
Together with Shots, I think. I don't know.
Sign me up.
Yeah,
No, go ahead.
Anyway,
Sorry.
so they have like solo queue time up until that point. You get your lunch, you then scrim, and like you do VOD reviews and so on, and everything is like planned out. And Shantz is basically the guy who's running it, and he's the guy in charge. So it's a bit like Daylor in that sense, and I think that's super good. I really respect that, and I think that's what more organizations in Europe need to do, because we tend to have some players who believe they are a little bit bigger than maybe they are, and it can be very, very wise to listen to someone who has better overview, maybe a little bit older.
And plans their lunches.
Yeah.
Plans for lunch.
Do they pack them with like? Is there a note
Possibly.
written in
We have
there?
to
Like,
ask.
The
What a little
easy
bit.
answer
I'll
was
ask.
Pulse. I don't know why you
Yeah.
did
In
it.
the Vitality House, really?
The thing is, what I do actually agree with that, and I do think that we're continually seeing that teams with a strong organizational structure behind them, especially when it comes to coaches, managers, and analysts, are doing significantly better. And we're starting to see more and more rosters pick up all this additional support staff. And it is showing in terms of calls, in terms of strategy. Today, maybe slightly less so than last week for Europe, but the growth is there.
Or getting rid of them like
Splice
OG.
banned soda in their house.
Good. Like,
Yeah, the players were crying about it on Twitter yesterday. Pouring all the coke into the sink. So
gotta stay healthy. Gotta
you
stay
know,
healthy.
the Yamato cannon, the potato cannon. He's a ruling of Iron Fist.
No, but it's very interesting indeed to see those different styles evolve. Maybe one last note. Last week we were all, we're seeing so much tactical diversity and the teams know how to play their game on a higher level. Honestly, for most of the games today, we saw a bit of a regression.
oh, there was some messy games.
Yeah.
There. Deficio's done.
Except
He's
for the
like,
last
I'm
game.
walking out of
Yeah,
here.
last game was great.
Deficio just couldn't get anything in the predictions. Everyone was playing different things. No, it was
Graves
just
top
a little
once.
bit messy in some of the
was.
longer games. When you look at like plays that just stall the game out. Last week we were like, great, fast games. Everybody knows how to close the game.
It also shows, because last week was sort of
Yeah.
top of the table versus bottom of the table in many scenarios. And today we saw a little bit more of like top v top, bottom v bottom. And you can see where some of these additional stall outs and mistakes come from.
I also think teams adapted to pick and ban phase a little bit. You know, there were more wave clear coming in, a little bit more control. Yet, I feel like there's so many games where just like kind of like good play, then mistake, then good play, mistake, you know, and it became very messy, except for the last game here.
Well, we will see if it's less messy tomorrow. But over in the World of Fantasy LCS, Mr. Rawls will be carrying your team. That is, if you're in the 5.5% of rosters that started him this week. 10 kills, 5 assists, and a quadrar. He is today's fantasy leader with 39 points. I don't have him.
Another sleeper pick you can go for
Yep.
is Betsy. I noticed as well he's very far down the list. He is available in most leagues, especially in our league. I was looking at him earlier. But I went for Nuke Duck, so no Ryu, so I went for Ryu, of course.
Well, I have a feeling Spellsy might have picked him up there for Betsy because, you know, statistically he would have planned it out. Betsy
He had a great game,
especially
Again,
after last week
Betsy
as well.
on Rise was really good.
I'm a little bit disappointed, although thankful. Trevor tweeted me earlier in our league just to be like, oh, make sure you check your league. I nearly took Sven out to put Seal back
Oh.
in. But I believed in my first rank pick, and it paid off. Unfortunately, Fox only got me like 1.5
Start your stats.
points.
I sincerely hope I beat Stress this week. That's all that matters.
Definitely is. And we'll see who beats who tomorrow. As the
sun
EU
will come out
LCS spring
tomorrow,
split
Sean.
continues tomorrow. Stack roster of Vitality and Origin face off, and that is also our game of the week. Very good. And later on, Fnatic go up against the Unicorns of Love, G2, H2K. Wow, I'm loving all these matchups.
Whole load of good matchups. I cannot wait actually for Vitality OG. If OG are back, Vitality looked on decent form themselves, even with a slower paced game. Should be a good matchup.
I want UOL to bounce back.
Yeah,
I
I
want
was about
last
to
week's
say that.
Yeah, he
UOL.
does.
I need to jump in there before you did. I want
great
last
shot
week's
caller.
UOL to show up because they brought some of that magic that UOL had in the summer split. And
Thought
you
we
know,
banned that.
I know, but it was back, and I'd like to see it again with some less mistakes in pick and bans.
I'm looking at
Sorry.
the two last games. Honestly, Splice, Rocket, because again, what I like now is seeing teams who get off to like potentially a 0-9 start. You know, can they hit the point with the like we did with Copenhagen Wolves back then in Spring Split 2013
Oh, it's
or whatever?
onto the Danes to do it.
You know,
course.
I know. I just want to see if Splice can bounce back, and I believe Rocket is a better team right now, and I want to see them show that in the game. Because I think they're doing so many right things, and there's like 1 or 2 wrong things every game, and they go out after the game, so be like, oh man, come on, we just had that game, and then they lost it.
They did.
So I want to see them convincingly win that game.
We will see. In any case, we need to go on cooldown as we ready for tomorrow's games. For everyone here covering the European LCS, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow.
Disappointed dad Deficio.